All right, it is time for some TV musings of what I have been watching and wrapping them up. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be me sharing some thoughts on 4 different TV series that I finished recently, and these are all series that are 100% complete. They are done, wrapped up with a bow. Some are recent, some are not so recent, some are somewhere in the middle, and it's a little bit of everything in terms of genre. I have a comedy, a science fiction, a fantasy, and a biographical drama, or dramatization of a bio. I don't know what you call it, like with a film, you call it a biopic, but with a TV series, if it's based on real people, I'm not sure what you call it. I guess biographical drama. I'm going with biographical drama, I think. Anyway, that's not where we're starting. We're starting with the comedy because it is the most recent finish. It is the most recent show, and it is the longest show. So I have to put things in order, so I always pick an order. I can't remember which of those is the order for this, but we're going to start with the longest show, and that is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So this is the most recent of the shows that I have watched in terms of when it finished, because it ran from 2013 to 2021. It was 8 seasons long, had 153 episodes, and it took me a year and a half to watch it. When I actually started watching it, it was actually still being released. The last season hadn't come out yet. So if you're unfamiliar with the show, it is a comedy. It's a cop comedy. Maybe you can get that from this. I don't know if I would necessarily pick that up from this. As the series begins, we're at the 9-9 in Brooklyn, so it's a cop precinct, and they are waiting on their new captain. And so we have, and these are the major players, which include Jake, who is someone who doesn't take things seriously at all, but is very competitive. And then we have Amy, who is also very competitive, especially with Jake, but she takes everything seriously. So they are 2 of the main characters. We also have Charles, who's sort of Jake's best friend, Gina, who is the captain's assistant, Diaz, who is just all around awesome and a bit of an enigma, and Terry, who is the sort of, second in charge after the captain. And then we have Captain Holt, which is played by Andre Braugher, who is the new captain. And that's sort of the dynamic of the show. I don't watch a lot of comedies, and I think those are sort of some standard sitcom types, especially Gina, who doesn't like to do anything at work. I think I've heard that that's a situation like a sitcom sort of caricature kind of, or character type, like the person who never wants to do anything at work. We also have, and they're not pictured here, Hitchcock and Scully, who I actually really grew to enjoy over the seasons. Not always. They're often it's a comedy, so I don't know if you need the comic relief, but they're like the extra comic relief and they're often have their jokes or their gags are around food. That's the one thing about the show, is I really didn't like any of the sort of food gags, especially because it was a show that I often watched with dinner. And there are lots of long-running jokes throughout the entire series, or certain styles of episodes, or certain things that have become traditions and stuff like that. So that's sort of fun to see over the years as well, or over the seasons as well. There's some that I liked more than others, and there's some characters that I liked over others, and I think that happens with any ensemble cast, and that's totally okay. And actually, this was recommended to me by Izzy for one particular episode between Rosa and someone in her family, and that episode was really, really great, and I really appreciated seeing it. And it was well into the series, and is a bit more serious in terms of the content, and that's one of the things that I think the show actually does quite successfully, is that even though it's a comedy, there are certain things that come up that they tackle and talk about, and I appreciate that, especially from a diversity perspective. And so I thought that was pretty great. I will say the final season did get a bit more serious, at least for the season opener, but I found that happened with almost any TV series that came back after the first year of COVID and after 2020. They often, especially the cop shows, often had a more serious tone. It did sort of melt, it did change some things, but it did sort of come back to sort of where it was, which was a bit awkward, which I found a bit awkward about, to be honest, any show that came back after 2020. I think it's just the truth. And I think in, 10, 20, 30 years, people will be like, why was that one season so strange? And that's because they wouldn't have remembered, or maybe wouldn't even have lived through 2020 and COVID. So I'm not going to hold that against it, because honestly, as I said, almost every show that I've watched has had a bumpy, or just like needed to say something, so they said something, but did they always incorporate it? Not really. Did it show that they didn't talk about it too much before? Sometimes. This show did tackle issues, though. It did, both diversity in terms of LGBTQIA+, as well as race, and so it was present, but that one sort of, actually there also was one particular episode in the final season that was spectacular in terms of taking on someone who just denies everything. So I will say that had one spectacular showing of that I really appreciated. And but generally speaking, it's a comedy. You're meant to laugh. I enjoyed the characters and the relationships and some of the awkwardness with the relationships. And but comedies aren't my bread and butter. They're not what I go to. I usually have one at a time, and it is my dinner show. So this one was my dinner show for like a year and a half. So by the end of it, I didn't quite realize how attached I had become to some of the characters, or some of the characters I can see myself in. I'm an Amy without question. But for me, what kept me with the show is, without question, Andre Braugher as Captain Holt. He is someone who I have enjoyed his work always, since Homicide: Life on the Street from the mid to late 90s. I thought he was fantastic in that. That was an ensemble cop show as well, but it was dark and gritty. It was set in Baltimore, and it was phenomenal. I don't know if I would be able to watch it now, because of how dark and gritty it was. It wasn't gritty. It just felt realistic, and just, he was so good. He was, especially in the series opener, so good. It was such a challenging situation, and just won me over from there. And I just think he's a great actor. I also really love Rosa a lot. I find the Charles and Jake friendship funny, kind of awkward funny, and Terry is just a treat. And so it's been an interesting ride to stay with the show for so long, and yeah, I'm glad that I did. I think, it's one of those ones where it was a little outside my comfort zone, because it was a comedy, but because it was a cop comedy, and I've seen so many buddy cop movies over the years and stuff like that, I sort of felt like I got some of the stuff. Unfortunately, I feel like Jake, who is the lead, was one of the characters that I was the least interested in terms of, but then when, as the seasons went on and they had some sort of reflective stuff, I was like, oh wow, no, okay, I there's something here. But it's just, with an ensemble cast, there's certain people that you enjoy more than others, and I think that just happens. And so it was really interesting to see that this one over all of those seasons in that year and a half. So I think it was an interesting show. So let me know, have you seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Did you enjoy it? Do you have other cop comedies that you watch? Would love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, so that one, I really came to enjoy it more than I expected. And I know I have room for another comedy. I actually know what I'm currently watching, but that will come up in some other video. Okay, so next on to the biographical drama limited series, and this is Fosse Verdon. So this focuses on the relationship between choreographer director Bob Fosse and actress dancer Gwen Verdon. They're played by Sam Rockwell and Michelle Williams, respectively. It was an 8-episode limited series that was on FX in 2019. I think it is available on Disney. Oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is on Netflix, at least here in Canada. That's how I saw it. But Fosse Verdon I ended up buying from Google Play, because you don't often see TV series about dance, and that's how I came to it. I was like, oh, this is going to be about dance, because it's about a choreographer and a dancer. I had no knowledge of the relationship between Gwen Verdon and Bob Fosse before watching this. I knew who Bob Fosse was. I had seen Cabaret, which he had directed, and I had a general sense of who he was. Oh, I had also seen Is It All That Jazz? That is a biopic about him with Roy Scheider from Jaws. that connection is just always so weird to me. Anyway, so I had not seen All That Jazz for years and years and years. I hope that's what it's called. But so I had a sense of what the story of his life was, but I didn't know about his relationship with Gwen, Verdon, and other things that were going on. So this one, it took me 4 months to finish this, even though it was only an 8-episode series. I think at some point I just decided I was going to watch it on one night a week, was going to be sort of like my performing arts TV show to watch. And so I watched it then. And as I got to the end, I ended up just watching it till the end. But this one was a lot tougher than I expected. It was set, I think, mostly in the 60s and 70s. If I remember, Cabaret was in the 70s. So maybe it was all the 70s. Don't quote me on that. I should have looked that up. Sorry. But it was a lot tougher. It was a lot, I wouldn't necessarily say grittier, but it was just darker. They have a tumultuous relationship. They are both very focused on dance as more as work, and as opposed to art. Not saying it isn't art, not saying they don't think of it as art, but they need to get the work. It's important to them. And in this one, like, I didn't realize that Gwen Verdon, it sounded like she, like, coming into the series, it sounds like she is the one who has the most success and is the most well-known, and then Bob Fosse is sort of like known as a choreographer and looking and working towards getting an in as a director, and people aren't always on board with his approach, with his style, with what he wants to say. And I will say that them working together on creative vision was really cool to see, and you could see how well they worked in that aspect together and how they could share a vision and bring it to life, or just they understood each other in that kind of artistic relationship. But their personal relationship was quite tough to watch. It was very just not great. Like, it just, I'm not going to go into details. It's always tricky when it's a biography type thing because some people will know. I knew some, and also how it's told, the way in which the TV series shows the stories. You get a sense of where things are going. So it's just it was just a bit tough. So although I thought the dance was great, and seeing their backstories, both of their backstories were really tough, and how they came to the work and the expectation on them as young people to do this as work. And like, it was way tougher than expected. I will say that Sam Rockwell, I thought, was excellent in this. And I also really liked, in terms of the supporting cast, Norbert Leo Butz as his friend Patty. Oh my gosh, some of their scenes, like, it really got me. I didn't connect as much with Michelle Williams, but I gotta say, I think I found this picture. I think, yeah, it doesn't directly say that this is them, but it kind of sort of says at the bottom that this is them. That, my goodness, the casting and the physicality that they brought really, really, I mean, it's like this, I think this is Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon. That's what the article is about. So, I mean, they really nailed it from that perspective, from the images that I've seen. So it's kind of tough because it's like, it's totally, I will watch anything about dance. I will watch anything about the performing arts, but it was just so heavy and it was a tough time. And I often find that things that are set during the 70s can be either set or created in the 70s can be a little grittier than I tend to enjoy. And especially if it's sort of realistic. Science fiction, love. But realistic stuff, because there was so much, like, sort of the culture of things, like, there was a lot of toughness that just sort of feels like was very present, and a lot of tough things. So it was like one of those things that I think it was really well done, and my heart just was like, while I was watching it, but it wasn't what I expected at all. I am glad I had seen Cabaret. They do talk about Cabaret a fair amount. So if you're going to watch the series, I would recommend watching Cabaret. There is also another film that I hadn't seen, with Dustin Hoffman. And I don't know, well, I didn't see it, and I felt like I am still interested in it, but it feels differently because, like, when they're talking about something, especially when they're talking about jobs and getting the work and are they going to get it and is it going to be successful? And if you already know about, like, that film or that show or that tour, then, you know, it can diminish the dramatic element, but I think you're always going to run into that with biographical stuff. So I was happy I'd seen Cabaret, but I don't necessarily know if that's a requirement going in. I think your mileage may vary on that. So, but I am happy that I had seen it. Okay, on to the next one. Speaking of 70s, we are going to the past to what used to be the future, which is now the past again. And that is Space 1999. Okay, so this is a science fiction series. It ran for 2 seasons, had 48 episodes, and it aired between 1975 and 1977. And it starred Martin Landau and Barbara Bain. The premise of this one, which is so funny because I actually did not pick up on the premise of this one, even though the opening sequence reiterates it. I didn't pick up on the premise of this one. So this one is set on Moonbase Alpha, which is a base on the moon. So this will spoil the first episode. So if you don't want to know, I'll put this down and I'll put it back up when I've shared the spoiler of what the premise of the show is. So what happens is there is an event, science, I don't know, something happens, I can't remember, I don't think you actually know, but something happens and the moon is thrown out of orbit and into the universe beyond. So they are now on the moon with no connection to Earth anymore, and so it's a bit of a survivalist kind of vibe because they're out there on their own and space adventures ensue. Okay, spoiler for first episode is over. So this one, I'm also, as I think I started to say but didn't finish the thought, I'm embarrassed that I didn't. It took me so long to figure out the premise of the show. I think it was like 8 or 12 episodes in where I'm like, does that mean blank? You know, which is the premise of the show, because the opening sequence like reiterates what happens in the first episode so that you know what the premise of the show is. Because also this is an older show. It's from the 70s. It's not like it's something that people would watch on streaming because that didn't exist then. So the opening sequence lets you know what the show is about. Also, one of the things that they do in this, and I'm not a huge fan of this, is in the opening sequence, I don't know if it's for both seasons, but for at least one of them, it also says this episode, and then it has a sort of flash of different key exciting moments of the episode. So it's sort of like a commercial for the episode in the middle of the episode. Some shows do this. I think the Redux of Battlestar Galactica did that, and I wonder if that means the original Battlestar Galactica did that. I'm not sure. So I have, like, this one I have some vague memories of, but it's one that I have never seen start to finish, and it is available on Tubi, although season 2 is out of order for some reason. The beginning and the end of the season are fine, but the middle episodes are all in a different order. So I found a list and I worked my way through the list. So this was just sort of like a science fiction blind spot. I had never seen the whole thing. I noticed it was available. I think it's available on Prime, maybe only the first season. At least, as I say these things, always in Canada, which is not, we don't always get the same availability isn't necessarily the same worldwide. But Tubi, I don't know how international Tubi is. It is a free service. There are ads, but not, I think with this, there was like one at the beginning and like 2 or 3 throughout. But it was a way I could finish watching the series. So although there is a lot of like old school science fiction goodness, there is also a lot of, and these are the leads on some planet they encounter, and there is and then these are 2 of the characters that are more prominent in the second season, but there is a lot of beige, there is a lot of 70s 60s feeling type things, and it doesn't necessarily hold up the test of time. I would say coming to it, like, there was definitely some like reverse nostalgia in terms of just that it's a science fiction show at that time. There are lots of models, there's lots of takeoffs and in space and models and some battles, but they're from the 70s, so that's not going to be everyone's thing. I thought they were fun to watch, but I do feel like it had some outdated storylines and themes for some of the stories that were uncomfortable, and now we wouldn't approach that in that manner. Often they were trying to talk about a moral dilemma, as often is the case in science fiction, but I felt some of them I was like, wow, like if I watched it again, I would skip that a couple of episodes just because of how uncomfortable they were in terms of what they were depicting or what they were saying. Just no. It wasn't the predominant tone, but it did happen again and again, or on occasion. And also season 2 definitely got younger and prettier and lighter. They had an older scientist character that just disappeared. They had also a scientist. There was a guy who was the head of the computer, who is their sort of liaison to the computer, and the computer was kind of a character, and that was played by a black man, and he wasn't in the second season. And then they did add sort of a young, pretty woman to the second season, who we have here. What was her name? And I will admit, she is a really, really cool character, but it just, like, when you see it, like, from, like, when you're watching it like I did, like, one season one day, and the next season starts the next day, it's just like, wow, and it often, I find a lot of reality competition shows that tends to happen. I find it frustrating. It's like, okay, because we had some, we had inclusion, and now not inclusion. And so I don't know what the reasons were behind that. I don't know. I didn't read up on it later, but I thought it was a little frustrating to see that happen. So it was also a show that I watched while I did physiotherapy. So I got through it pretty swiftly, I think 3 months. And because it is 48 episodes, and like for that purposes, it was fine because I didn't need to pay full attention. I still enjoyed some of the sort of nostalgic 70s goodness, and then the episodes that weren't that great, I just didn't pay as much attention to. So it's kind of one it was a good show for a good fit. Would I sit down and watch this every day as my key watch, my focused, excited moment watch TV show? No. For the purposes that I watched it for, it was perfect. So yeah, so Space 1999. Let me know, have you seen it? Did you enjoy it? Have you rewatched it if you watched it back in the day? And I will leave a link below for if it's still available on Tubi, which is a free service, which is how I watched the second season. But wow, so much beige. I mean, so much, but all of the costumes were beige. I think I might have pulled a picture where it's just lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of beige. It's just beige all around. Yeah, there's the older scientist guy. So it was nice to see it was sort of a dual protagonist at some points as a sort of male-female lead. The woman played a doctor and the guy was the captain. And then the older guy was the science type character. So that was Space 1999. And then next up, I rewatched from start to finish Merlin. And so that's not the best episode, but or the best photo. I love it as a photo, but I think we should have an ensemble one for, oh, that's pretty good. Oh, that, maybe not. Let's go with this one. So Merlin is a fantasy TV series, Arthurian TV series, obviously. 5 seasons long, 65 episodes. It ran from 2008 to 2012. I did watch it when it originally aired and really enjoyed it. And I started to pick it up again. It took me a year and 2 months to finish it, but I watched it very lightly. I watched it while I was multitasking or updating my spreadsheets and stuff like that. And then eventually, again, also while I did physiotherapy to finish it off, and then I watched the finale as to watch it because it was so good. I really love this show. If you're unfamiliar, the premise is a young Merlin goes to Camelot to become a physician's assistant, and then he ends up becoming sort of Arthur's personal servant. In the castle, we also have Uther as king. Morgana is Uther's ward, and Gwen Gwen is someone who works in the castle as a servant. And so and Merlin works for Gaius, who is not a character within Arthurian legend as far as I know, but it does pull in lots of different parts of the Arthurian legends, and there's I really enjoyed how it wove in different characters, different relationships, and we get some really nice reoccurring characters over time and interpretations of the Arthurian legends through this. So, and we never most, I don't think we've ever seen Merlin as a younger person in any of the different interpretations of Arthurian legends as far as I've seen. And I've read a fair amount. I've read Le Morte d'Arthur, I've read The Once and Future King, and I've watched lots of different Arthurian stuff, but to see something from Merlin's perspective was really cool. I will say this one is a lot more lighthearted in terms of actually all of the shows that I mentioned. It is more of a family-centric show. I wouldn't say it's a kid show, but it is a bit more family-centric. They often have like some episodes that are a little more goofy here and there, like throughout the seasons. But as it goes on, the story gets more and more serious. So I think it kind of grows like with the show grows maybe with the audience. So I really loved it. It's just so much fun. I like the magic. It is at a time, like it is from the perspective where magic is outlawed. So although Merlin has magical capabilities, he's not allowed. It would be dangerous for him to reveal that. And one of the things that I think that is interesting with this interpretation that we don't often see with Arthurian interpretations, usually it's magic is outlawed and religion is ruled, or not even necessarily Arthurian depictions, but generally when you see depictions where magic is outlawed, religion is what rules. And this has like no religion at all. Like it's just like the king makes all of the decisions, and there is like no speak of religion pretty much at all beyond like the old, I'm trying to remember what Gaia says, the old, I think they might even just say like the old ways, like in the terms of the ways of magic. So, and I thought that was great. Like it just sort of, it gave it a different dynamic. And I felt like there was a lot less tension, and there's a lot of fear of magic, but it's, you know, it's not so much seen as evil, which can often be the depiction, but just power, like the power's not allowed, which is not the best theme. It does come up with a lot of sort of fantasy or non-fantasy things that deal with magic. So anyway, I thought it was great. And this was another one, like as I said, I rewatched it for multitasking as well as doing physiotherapy, and I knew like the episodes that I really, really liked and the characters that I really, really liked, so I would sort of plan around that and pay more attention to the ones that I really liked, and the sillier ones were not my favorite. And so I just sort of let those, just watch those and let them run and just be okay with that. There wasn't tons of them, but I thought this was a great show. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great friendships. There's a lot of great moral questions and dilemmas throughout. And as I said, I love how they wove in especially the supporting characters and the subplots from the Arthurian legends and the different take that they took on them. And then the other stories that look like they had nothing to do with them, like stories that were newly created and backgrounds, or at least they were ones that I was unfamiliar with. And, I thought it was great. I thought it was just, I love the intro. I love the cast. And it was just so much fun. So it was definitely one that I will probably watch again. It's not that long at 65 episodes. Each of the 5 seasons are 13 episodes. And, but it does, at the end of the episode, it always says next time on, and I never want to see that. So, but I always like Arthurian things. There is an Arthurian show, that I haven't seen yet. But I always try and watch them when they're on. This one was a rewatch though. So, so I liked it so much. I watched it twice, but I had watched it when it was first released, which was now, I guess, 10 years ago. Where does the time go? Anyway, so those are 4 of the shows that I have finished recently. Obviously, I had a lot to say about them. And so, yeah, let me know. Have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Fosse, Verdon, Space 1999, or Merlin? And do you have any recommendations, especially for Arthurian shows or any science fiction and fantasy shows or any dance shows? Honestly, I don't, the next one I had lined up, it wasn't available anymore. So I was like, so I haven't quite picked my next one. I feel like I have, but I can't think of it. So anyway, that's what I have been watching recently. Let me know your thoughts. Have you seen these? Do they sound interesting to you? And I'll be back soon in another video. Thanks for watching.